Hey, this is Gen X Amplified episode number 18, and I've been waiting for this one for a long time because on this episode, we are going to listen and learn how to become a better speaker and performer, but not on stage, but in life. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
So we're actually an incredibly lucky generation because we have technological advances that the millennials have, but we also have the experience to know a little bit more about the world.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrian Porter.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Amplified, the podcast for you, the exceptional Gen Xers, that powerful generation between those magnificent millennials and those brilliant boomers. Now, I am very, very, very excited about this conversation that I'm about to have because I feel like we are about to become students in a master class on public speaking. That's because my featured guest is called an uncommonly honest author by the Boston Globe, a marketing guru by the Wall Street Journal, and a sales guru by the Financial Times. He is a New York Times best-selling author of 6 books, including Book Yourself Solid, which I absolutely love, the Think Big Manifesto, and now his brand new release, Steal the Show, with this awesome subtitle. So you ready for this? From speeches to job interviews to deal closing pitches, how to guarantee a standing ovation for all the performances in your life. Now, he's probably the only New York Times bestselling business book author to have also been a successful professional actor, guest starring on shows like Sex and the City, which is actually one of the shows that I used to market at HBO, Law and Order, Third Watch, All My Children, and in films like The Pelican Brief and Down to Earth. Now, these days, he can be seen regularly on MSNBC, CNBC, and PBS as an on-air expert in communication and business development. Everyone, please give a virtual standing ovation for my Gen Exceptional guest, Michael Port. Michael, what's going on, man?
Can I bring you wherever I go? Because that voice is ridiculous. Is there a place I can buy that voice?
We'll talk. We'll talk after the show. I'll send you my PayPal.
You can hook me up a little bit.
I'll hook you up a little bit
because I got to tell you, man. No, and also you are one of the few people who does a great introduction. You are thoughtful with it. You take your time with it. And that really makes a difference for your guests on the show. So just want to commend you on that. It's a really nice job.
Michael, that truly, it truly means a lot to me. I am like sitting here very humble. Thank you so much. Especially coming from you, somebody that I definitely admire. And this is the first time you and I have ever had a conversation, but I've been following you for a while. I've read your books. I'm actually in the middle, the recent book, because it just came out actually this week and I'm listening to it now, but I'm already excited and I can't wait to dig into this book. Now, Michael, before we really get into Steal the Show, I want to first focus on the power of story, in particular, your story. Could you briefly just talk about, Michael, your journey that led you to this current career as an author and a speaker and a trainer?
Yeah, sure. When I was in college, I was studying psychology. I was absolutely bored out of my mind. Mm-hmm. I was interested in people, but probability and statistics was just not my cup of tea. And then I found theater, and I fell in love with it. Okay. And that's what I switched my major over to theater.
Okay.
And I said, well, I did it for 2 years and I thought, I can't go out there and just work. I got to go get some more training because I believe in the pursuit of mastery. So I applied to the graduate acting program at NYU and I got in. And that was a 3-year training program and it was fantastic. And I got out and I worked and you named some of my credits. But I got to the point where I just was impatient. I've never been accused of having any patience whatsoever. Let's just get that on the table. I have a sense of urgency. And when I was a younger man, I didn't have any patience for waiting. And sometimes you have to wait. You got to do the work, but you have to wait.
Right.
And that is just a natural part of life. But I wasn't willing to do it at that age. So I decided to leave acting, and I talked my way into a job in the fitness industry for which I was completely unqualified. I had, on the business side, I had absolutely no experience. I told them I didn't have any of the certifications that they thought that they were looking for. But I said, listen, I think you're looking for someone more like me, and here's why. And I got the job, and I moved up quite quickly. And then I spent 5 years there, and then I left and went out and started my own consultancy. And within a couple of years, I realized, if you want to be well known in this industry, you got to write. But I didn't have a habit of writing. I didn't particularly like writing when I was younger. I've always been dyslexic. So I practiced every single day, just a little bit of writing. Even if I didn't know what I was going to say, I would just write about what I did that day. And then I started writing more and more, and I wrote Book Yourself Solid in 2005, and 6 books later, and I started in 2003 officially. So almost 13 years later, Steal the Show is now out. And man, I'm just the luckiest dude in the world to get to do this kind of work. That's all there is to it.
No, and Book Yourself Solid. So the book you just mentioned, that was really that was the book that really put you on the map. I mean, outside of your career as an actor, was it?
Oh, no, my career as an actor didn't put me on the map. Although, interestingly enough, when I'm introduced for a speaking gig, people will, they'll list some of my credits, and people still look at their phones, It's like when someone's being introduced, you say, oh, good. I have a little more time before they come on. I can finish this email, or they chat to their neighbor. But as soon as they say it was on Sex and the City, everybody looks up. All of a sudden, they're interested. I was on a plane a few months ago, my fiance and I, and the stewardess comes up and she kneels down and she goes, listen, were you on Sex and the City?
Oh, wow.
I said, in 1997 with a full head of black hair, and I'm completely shaven on my head now. How do you, she goes, oh, I'm such a big fan. I mean, people love that show. So,
I know.
So no, I wasn't particularly famous or infamous when I was an actor, but Book Yourself Solid put me on the map in this particular business.
Right.
And it is still, someone referred to it yesterday as a classic, which I got a kick out of. To have produced something that someone calls a classic is a little bit surreal to me. But I hope it does. It's for people who don't typically love marketing and selling. It's a very honest, very straightforward book. A lot of the concepts that you'll hear in the book, you may have heard before, but people comment. And if you see you read the reviews on Amazon, you see this over and over. People say, I'd heard some of those ideas before, but I never had anyone integrate them in that way, in such an organized way that I could consume it so easily and follow a particular process. And the reason I think I'm able to do that is because I'm dyslexic. A lot of times we think that our quote unquote disabilities or weaknesses are just that. Often our strengths are just as much as our weaknesses, and our weaknesses are just as much as our strengths. So the reason that my books are well organized is because when I hear all this disparate information and all these different ideas from all these different spaces, I have to organize them in a way that makes sense to me. And because of my dyslexia, that requires a really, really, really organized way of thinking. And as a result, it helps other people, even if they, have no dyslexia whatsoever, it helps them engage in something that they normally wouldn't. I mean, most people who read books like Book Yourself Solid are not reading them because it's beach reading. They're reading them because they want to get clients.
Right.
And otherwise they wouldn't pick the book up. They wouldn't have any desire to. The same thing with Steal the Show. Steal the Show is, it's a tour de force on public speaking, but it's also a book about performing in all the high stakes situations in your life. Because if you think about your life and the quality of your life is often determined by how well you perform during those high stakes situations. So if you fall flat during a high stakes situation, then, not a lot happens. But if you can shine when the spotlight's on you, well, then, you can generally do pretty big things in the world. And the way that I've organized that book, again, is getting the same kind of feedback that, wow, I never thought about performance in this way as an everyday person, and how I can use the techniques that a performer uses authentically in all aspects of my life. And the same thing with the public speaking, how to start working on a speech, how to rehearse a speech, how to give a speech in a very organized fashion.
Yeah, you're right. And you were talking about Book Yourself Solid being this classic, and the only reason why people would really gravitate if they're in Barnes and Noble and they see it on the shelf to pick it up and probably buy it is to book clients. And I tell you personally, it was that way for me. I found out about the book literally through the social web. As I got more into podcasting and reading blogs, and I had transitioned from working for corporate. Well, when I was working for Cartoon Network as a marketer, and then I went out on my own and I started to pursue consultancy. And I tell you, transitioning from a mindset of a full-time employee to having to go out and understand that you eat what you kill is a totally different mindset. And I had to really adjust to that. So when I saw your book, I said, okay, this is the Bible for understanding how to really get clients. So I tell you that it was very instrumental for me. And I'm glad that you really put that in the market. So I really want to.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me.
Oh, thank you. No problem at all. Now I really want to unpack this wonder of this book that you just released called Steal the Show. And it is weird when I think about the name Steal the Show and even the subtitle. You think like looking at the cover and you may listening to your background and people that may know about you thinking, oh, this is a book just for acting or just for, and it's not.
No way. And it's actually not for actors. Actors wouldn't, they'd get value of it from, with respect to their regular life, but it would have really not too much impact on their actual work as actors. It's for regular people. It's for real people. Yeah.
So in my takeaway, it was really about finding your voice, and I'm sure you're going to go into more detail about being a performer outside of being an actor. Can you just tell us though, because I think it's very fascinating, what was that moment? Like what was the light bulb moment that made you really want to write this book?
Yeah. This is the book ultimately that I wanted to write all along.
Okay.
I needed more life experience to be able to do so, because it's not an easy topic to address for a couple different reasons. Number one, many people have a negative association with the idea of performance. They think it means you're fake or phony if you're performing.
Right.
So that's one piece that I needed to handle. And also, I needed to be able to demonstrate over the years how influential performance has been on my career, no matter where I've been working. And of course, I do so much public speaking training now. We have a whole second company that's devoted to it specifically. That experience has also helped me identify what somebody needs who doesn't think of themselves as a performer. How do you turn them into somebody who does think of themselves as a performer in an honest and authentic way? You do not need to be an entertainer to be a performer. That's a myth.
Okay.
You don't need to be an entertainer to be a performer. You don't need to be a comedian. You don't have to have a big personality. And one of the things that I do in the beginning of Steal the Show is I make sure that I have put some brackets around the word performance and the word audience.
Okay.
Because to me, audience is anybody that you are interacting with. Anybody that's listening to you is an audience of a kind. And anytime you are trying to achieve something, you're performing. Now, that does not mean that you're putting on an act. It does not mean that you look at the other person as somebody that you are attempting to manipulate. Far from it. This entire book is focused on honesty and authenticity as a performer.
Okay.
But what we need to do, well, actually we don't, I think we need to, somebody else might disagree, but I believe that we can amplify certain parts of our personality so that we can shine in one particular scenario, amplify different part of our personality so that we can shine in a different scenario, amplify a different part of our personality so we can shine in that scenario, because we are so much more than one thing.
Right.
I think that we pigeonhole ourselves, and I think that often we get this idea of who we are, of what we do and what we don't do. of what we believe and what we don't believe. But if you think back, I'm 44 years old, so I'm a Gen Xer.
Same here. I'm 44.
Okay, you too. You too. So we're Gen Xers. Now, we've had a couple years under our belt, but we're still not fully grown up. We're not in our 70s, 80s. My grandmother is turning 103 this year. Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you, just like us, that she was a different person, quote unquote, when she was 25 than she is at 103. And we use that term, different person. Oh, I'm a different person now. No, you're not. You're exactly the same person. You just see the world differently. Right. You behave differently. You see yourself differently. And what I'm suggesting is that we explore all these different sides of ourselves in order to perform better. We explore them now. We don't just wait until later to decide, oh, now I have a different personality. This is my personality now. This is who I am now. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, like, no, didn't like that one. I'm now this other personality. I'm this other person now. We're so much more than that. And so I like this flexibility, playing the right roles in any situation. I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. Herb Brooks was the coach of the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey team. And when he was picking this team, he had to pick from college kids. They didn't use professionals at that time. And the guys that he was picking played against each other at college. So there was a lot of rivalry. Mm-hmm. They fought with each other. They were not used to playing on the same team. So he had that to contend with. He also had to contend with the fact that the Russians at the time were absolutely a force to be reckoned with. They'd never lost. Mm-hmm. They were twice as big. They were probably all shooting steroids. And they were relentless. So here he's got these little college guys who hate each other and are not even close to being ready to perform against a team like the Russians. So what he did is he decided to play a different role than he had played when he was a college coach. As a college coach, he was an affable guy, nice guy. All his players liked him. He got along well with them. When he went to coach the Olympic hockey team, he played a different role. He was a taskmaster, a drill sergeant. He told them, I am not your friend. I am your coach. You want a friend? You go over here. And he made them work harder than they've ever worked before. He made them work so hard that they were puking on the ice. And he was unconventional. He chose an unconventional team. He played them in an unconventional way, and he didn't get any approval throughout the whole process. The Olympic hockey team committee were very upset with him. His players hated him. Mm-hmm. But a couple things happened. Number one, the players hated him more than they hated each other. So they came together. Number two, he had a vision, and he was willing to go for the results rather than the approval. And he played a different role in order to do so. Mm-hmm. And guess what? They won.
Yes, they did.
They beat the Russians in 1980. It was a monumental feat, and it meant so much more than just hockey because of the Cold War. So if he had gone in there trying to be the nice guy, playing the role that he used to play, if he had cared about getting approval from the players on the U.S. Olympic committee, he wouldn't have won. They wouldn't have won. Now, eventually, because he won, they all respected him. They loved him. He became a hero.
Right.
So you get that kind of appreciation when you have the results that others are looking for. But if you go for the approval first, then you pander, then you water yourself down, then you play a false role, then you let other people cast you in the roles that you play rather than you choosing the roles that you play.
Wow. I remember that story. I mean, that the 1980 hockey team is definitely was one of those watershed moments in this country.
And if people haven't seen the film based on that story, the film is called Miracle.
That's right, Miracle. Right, great film. And I love the way that you really broke down his mindset, and you talked about amplifying certain parts of your personality, which a lot of people, I think they understand that, but they may look upon that as being something negative. Well, wait, no. I don't have all these multiple personalities, and I don't want to confuse anybody. And I should be one way. I should be myself. I should be who I am and be true to me. But
there's actually some really interesting work done around this idea of being true to self. Sometimes, and this happens often in management, sometimes people are so true to themselves, quote unquote, that they cannot adapt in the corporate culture, and they have a hard time moving up because your role needs to change as you move up. So when you're in the earlier stages, and the same thing is true for entrepreneurship. When I started my business, what I did day to day in the business is different than what I do now. I mean, there's some things that are similar, of course, but for the most part, what I do now is lead a team and go out and be the face of the team. But when I started, I had to do everything. I was making websites by myself. I was writing copy, everything that anything that needed to be done in a business, I was doing it myself. But your role changes over time. And if I couldn't move into a leadership role with a team, then I'll always stay at that sort of individual, sole proprietor level. And the same thing in the corporate world. When you move up the ranks, you're not doing the work in the same way you were before. You're doing different work, but you're integrating with people in different ways. Your role is different. You can't go gossip by the water cooler anymore.
Right.
First of all, I don't think that performers are critics. I think you can be one or the other, but I don't think you can be both. So if you spend a lot of time criticizing others, then it's hard to be a performer because performers need to take risks. And if you spend a lot of time criticizing others, then you are less likely to take risks because you are afraid of what's going to come back at you. So let's stop being critics and let's start being performers. And I think that's really important. So we don't do that around the water cooler. But I use that as an example because you now have to play a role. You might come into work in a pissy mood. You might have a lot of things going on at home, but you can't bring that into the work. You've got to play the role of a leader. And how does a leader behave in the various situations that the leader finds herself in? And, that is something to consider. If you want to move forward, what are the roles that you need to play in order to move up? And I'll say this so nobody, can push back on me and say, but that's manipulative. I'm saying without being manipulative, not changing your values, not going along with somebody who wants to go out and jump off the Brooklyn Bridge. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the style of behavior, the way you interact with people, the way you see yourself, the way you see the world. Those things start to change. And some of your physicality can even change. So if I'm, hanging out, in New York where I grew up, and I'm hanging out with a bunch of guys, who I used to run around with, the streets when I was a kid playing handball and, riding BMX bikes, that was our I might talk a little differently. I might use a little bit more colorful language. I might get more staccato in the way I speak. Maybe even a little bit my New York accent comes out. I don't start talking like this. Like I don't pretend that I have an accent that I don't. Like I don't do that. Right. But my rhythms, my timing, my tone, my sensibility will change if I'm sitting and having a conversation with some potential investors. Maybe I'm a little bit more considered in my pacing. Maybe I leave a lot more room for other people's thoughts when I'm having those kind of conversations. Because if I'm with those guys, if you leave a little room in that conversation, they'll start hazing you. They jump in there and everybody starts messing with each other. So it's a different role. It's a different dynamic than what would exist in that other scenario sitting with the investors. So we do change from person to person, but let's learn how to do it intentionally and authentically. And then you can go to networking events and you can feel confident and easy talking to almost anybody in that room. And it's just such a nice feeling to have.
Wow. You, this is so fascinating to me because you mentioned a couple of things. And I think No, I know that this is so tailor-made for this audience because number one, as you mentioned, you're 44, you're a Gen Xer, I'm 44. This show is called Gen X Amplified.
Yeah, that's right.
And you talk about amplifying certain parts of your personality based on scenarios so you can advance and create more impact. That's what this show is about. And so I really want to get closer to home now to really talk to that Gen Xer because is the mission and the movement for this show is to help those people that are in between 35 and 50 understand that they're in what I call the power phase of their lives. And a lot of people don't realize that. And because you hear read a lot of ink, you hear a lot of media about millennials and about boomers, and rightly so, because those are very important and large cohorts. But you have this middle generation of Gen Xers that are, again, in this power phase where they're struggling with many different distractions. They are squeezed between raising families a lot of times or taking care of aging parents. They're trying to advance in their career. They're trying to advance on their job. They're trying to start businesses even. And it's never been easier than it has been before in this new media marketplace, what I like to say. Can you talk a little bit about that and how, particularly how this book applies to that mindset?
Sure. Look, I don't pay a lot of attention to media culture just in general because, we just go in fads. We pay attention to millennials for a while. We pay attention to Gen X. It's all hyperbole from my perspective.
Right.
But I think that it's helpful to look at the role that is required. If we want to move forward, what role do we want to move into? I mean, that's, I think, the first question. What the performer does is they get really, really clear on their objective. That's what they do. And this isn't goal setting in the traditional sense. This is, what do I want to achieve? Certainly. But it's also, where do I want to be? And it's, who do I want to be? Who is really a very powerful question. We often look at goals, which is, well, I want to make this amount of money, or I want to have this job. I want to have this particular position. But who are you going to be when you accomplish those things? Because we're at an age now where we realize that things don't tend to make us happier. We're at an age now. I mean, look, I wouldn't mind another 10 feet on my boat, certainly, but it's not gonna change who I am.
That's 10 feet more than I have.
Well, I'm on the boat right now, actually.
Oh, you're killing me, man.
It's a beautiful day today, too.
Beautiful. So why do you want to do that? Now go ahead.
I mean, part of it is it's just extraordinary, the opportunities we have.
Right.
This is something that I created for myself here, and I feel like the luckiest guy in the world, but we couldn't have done this 20 years ago.
Right.
I mean, we wouldn't have the technology for it. We couldn't do it. So we're actually an incredibly lucky generation because we have the technological advances that the millennials have, but we also have the experience to learn to know a little bit more about the world. So we have those two things going for us, which is really quite extraordinary. I mean, I'm much more. I enjoy being 44 a lot more than I did being 34. There are my father-in-law or future father-in-law were getting married, and my fiance and I are getting married in December.
Oh, congratulations!
Thank you. He said he loved this. He said the first 30 years of your life are for learning. The next 30 years are for earning, and the next 30 years are for doing whatever the heck you want. So you work so you don't have to work. Now, people often say to me, "Oh, there's no way you could stop working. That's not possible. You're a personality." I say, "Yeah, I could. Absolutely. I'll do interesting things. I might even write. I might still, do some of this work, but not having to do the work is ultimately what we're working toward. And we're at an age where that's something we really need to consider very, very seriously. We're not kids anymore.
Right.
So who do we want to be as we move forward? Not just what do we want to have. So that's what I look at. And then I look at, well, what does that person look like? How do they behave? How do they act? How do they treat others? Are they the kind of person that others want to help? Or are they a self-centered person, selfish person? Are they the kind of person that finds meaning in other people, or is that the kind of person that finds meaning in things? These are the questions that I think are very interesting because they help round out your character, so to speak. And I use in Steal the Show, I use acting as a model. So acting technique, acting principles as a model, so that you can perform well in these high stakes situations. But it's not a metaphor. It's an actual model.
Right.
That's one of the things that you do when you're developing a character as an actor. You look at who this character is, and you often look at this character based on the actions that they take, because you can say anything about yourself, but what you do tells the world pretty much everything about you. So that's how I start to look at it. Who do I want to be based on how am I going to behave in the world as I go after the thing that I want? So I'll say that again, because that's a really important principle. Who do I want to be as I go after the things that I want to achieve in this world?
Powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is very was worth repeating. And a lot of, even me, I always, we always think about goal setting, and I've said this on the show before, like right now we're in the last quarter of the year. So we're already thinking about 2016 and I like to have everyone, especially Gen Xers, think about even the next 5 years of your life, 2020. But, though a lot of times those thoughts and ideas and things that you write down on your notepad or type in Evernote, those goals are very tangible and not as visceral when it comes to really visualizing who do you want to be. And so I've never heard it framed in that way. And I think it's so applicable, especially to this generation, to any generation.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you an example if I might.
Yeah.
So some people are very good at saving for retirement when they're very young. Some people are quite good about being frugal. And others are really good at spending. So I've always been really good at spending. Like
right.
I have a special talent for buying things. And that's sort of a joke. It's not actually a good thing. I knew I was waiting for that. I knew when I was younger that it's a good idea to save.
Right.
But I wasn't the kind of person that did that at that age. And why is that? Did I not understand that someday I would need to retire? No, I understood that intellectually. Did I not understand the value of compound interest? No, I understood that, intellectually. Did I not know people who saved for retirement and invested their money? No, I knew those people. Did people tell me that I should do this? Yeah, people did. But I wanted to be somebody that had a lot of money to spend.
Okay.
In my younger years. And I identified with that. It was a need for approval. Remember I mentioned before that, this need for approval can really hold you up in a lot of different ways.
Right, yes.
For me, there's a need for approval because it's a demonstration of the things that you do tell the world who you are. I could say, I'm a responsible person, but if I'm not acting that way, well, then I'm not a responsible person. And I think it's very easy to get caught up in the stories about who you are, who other people are. But if you are not acting in line with who you say you are, and you feel and you think that that's going to comfortably move you forward in life, I think it's going to be a surprise. And it surprised me that it took really finding the love of my life to want to be different. I would not ever be a different person. Remember I mentioned that earlier?
Yes.
Like I am who I am.
Right.
So I have to work against the desire to spend money. That's part of, it's just part of, I'm impulsive. That's me.
Yeah.
So I'm a great target for, financial salespeople.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but that now they don't get through the front door. The point is that it took a reframing of what I wanted to accomplish later, but who I needed to be in order to accomplish that. And then it changed my behavior.
That's a very common story. As I listening to you, I'm thinking about my own behavior. It's so true.
And then, of course, as you get older, you learn more, and you start to realize how many people have taken advantage of you financially over the years.
I know.
And of course, it's our responsibility, because if somebody pulled the wool over my eyes around a financial product, it's because I didn't do enough study on it and just made this assumption. But I didn't, when I was younger, I didn't really recognize all the conflict of interests that existed in that industry. And now that I do, I have more ownership over the results that I produce.
Yeah. No,
so I use that. Yeah, I use this example because I think a lot of people our age can relate to that.
No, that's why I was sitting here like totally engulfed in what you were saying, because I'm thinking about my own personal experiences, and I tell you, man, I lived in New York for 10 years myself, and I spent a little too much money there.
Well, look, I mean, you want to live in a 1-bedroom apartment in New York,
right?
Your rent is going to start at $6,000.
It's crazy. I know, it's crazy.
It's a crazy world. And if you want to buy a 1-bedroom, you're going to start at $2 million. Right. You got to put half down because it's a co-op. I mean, it's a whole nother world. So,
man, I tell you, I could talk to you literally for like 5 days straight, but this has been so great. I want to wrap up, but there are 2 questions, Michael, and I can't wait to hear your answers to these questions that I like to ask everyone that I have on Gen X Amplified. And so, the first one is, if there was a song that would play every time you entered a room or when you walked down the street that fits the story and the brand of Michael Port, what song would that be? Basically, what would be your own personal theme song and why?
Oh, that's so cool. Nobody's ever asked that one before.
That's how we do it over here.
That's how we do it. So I would say the Dave Matthews song.
Okay.
And I'm not sure if this is the title of the song, but the refrain that is the big refrain in the song is, "You and me, babe, we can do anything." And for people who are Dave Matthews fans, I'm sure they know that song.
Right. I think it's called You and Me. I think that's
is that right? You and Me?
Want to pack your bags?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
You take a trip to the end of the world. Mm-hmm. Right. That's how that's the theme song that I have in my head. And my fiance and I, that is our theme song together. So,
so that's actually a perfect answer then. Okay.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a great song. Great song, by the way. Cool. And then lastly, Michael, if there was one tool or resource, it could be a website, it could be a book, maybe other than your own, an app that you recommend, particularly to like people like Gen Xers, leaders, entrepreneurs, wannabe entrepreneurs that want to become a better leader, start a business, or just really maximize their impact in this current new media marketplace. What would that be?
Okay. So I'm going to give you a couple of books.
Awesome.
And we're going to continue on with our theme of retirement planning because we are in our 40s.
Yep.
And the sooner we start taking this really seriously, the better.
Okay.
So we can manage all of our money ourselves very easily. And we don't need to pay people to do it. It's really quite simple. And there's a couple books that I recommend. If somebody is already pretty comfortable with managing their own money in index funds, etc., then I would read a book called. It's by David Swenson, and it is I'm blanking on the title right now. That's my dyslexia. It sometimes does that.
That's okay.
Uncommon Success. That's what it's called.
Okay, Uncommon Success. Okay.
Uncommon Success by David Swenson. Okay. It is an incredibly powerful book. But if you're new to investing, retirement planning, then read John Bogle's book. John Bogle is the founder of Vanguard, which is a nonprofit investment company that holds $3 trillion in assets. It's where most people should keep their money from my personal perspective. And it's called the Little Book of Common Sense Investing. Okay. It's a little book that's like a red maroon dust jacket on it. And that's the book that I started with. And it really made me see the world as it is. And that's very important, because I think when it comes to money, it's hard to see the world as it is, because there are a lot of stories being told to you that are not necessarily true.
Right.
So the reason that I'm mentioning these is because when we start a business, we usually put our money into the business. And we think about the business, from we're always looking at how to make money in the business, how to make money in the business, how to make money in the business, how do I make more money in the business? But what we're doing in part is making money in the business so that we can turn that money into money that grows for us, that we can use later on. So I think that it's important to be able to do both of these things, focus on both of these things at the same time, not chase returns, not speculate. Be very sensible and sound in your retirement planning. So those are two books that I'd recommend there. And then look, we had a really great conversation about a lot of ideas, philosophy, ways of seeing the world, etc. And for the people who want like really hard-hitting public speaking stuff, they can go to Steal the Show with Michael Port. There's a podcast that I dropped. I dropped 3 weeks ago.
Oh, yes.
And 3 weeks ago, and we just hit 40,000 downloads today in the first 3 weeks.
Oh, congratulations. And actually, I failed to mention that early on, and I'm actually a huge fan of the podcast. Yeah.
Thanks, bud. Yeah, yes. We're number one in new and notable in all our categories today, which is really fun. I love it. I didn't know how to do any of that. I was just a guy who, was teaching public speaking, but your friends, Joel and Pei at Relaunch, produced it, and it's doing really well. So in any event, that's really hard hitting, short episodes, content driven work.
No, I've seen I've listened to it. It's on my phone. I've seen you and New and Noteworthy. Actually, you've been bumping me out the way every now and then.
Oh, snap.
No, it's good though.
Sorry about that.
No, it's good. Look, I haven't been as high as number 1, but I've been like anywhere as high as 6, and between 6 and like 20.
Nice.
But you, I mean, come on. It's
I just sent a check to iTunes. Guys, can you hook me up?
No, it's a great show, man. It has been definitely a pleasure chatting with you. As I said at the beginning of the introduction, I felt like that I was in a master class, not on acting, not on and I said speaking, but it was beyond that. It was about performance. We were in a class about appropriately titled Amplifying Your Personality. Yeah. And I think that, and I know that many of my listeners will have gotten a lot out of this. Can you tell everyone, Michael, the best way people can reach out to you or find out more about you?
Yeah. So right now, a great place to go is stealtheshow.com.
Okay.
Because that's where you can pick up a whole bunch of bonuses when you buy a copy of the book. And during this initial launch period, we are giving away the farm. That's pretty much how it works. So if you want online courses, templates, and much more, then you can go to stealtheshow.com. You can also go to michaelport.com, where you'll see everything that we've got, from the Book Yourself Solid mentoring program to the Book Yourself Solid School of Coach training to the Heroic Public Speaking training program and events. That site, michaelport.com, will lead you to all of those different things. And if you ever have a question for me, or if you have a question about public speaking that you want me to answer on the podcast, just send it to questions@michaelport.com, questions@michaelport.com. I do a Fan Mail Friday where people can ask questions, and then I answer them on the podcast.
Awesome. So everyone will have all those links to in the show notes to all the resources he just mentioned. Michael, thank you so much for hanging out with me, with us, and showing us all how to steal the show. Everyone, please go get this book. It is a must read, and it's been great, man.
Thanks, buddy. You're a great man. I really like you. And also, like, you can tell when people are nice people often just by the tone of their voice. And you've got a great voice. So thank you for that.
Oh, that means a lot coming from you, Michael, man. It's been a blast for me. Take care.
Take care.
Yes. That was New York Times best-selling author, public speaker, trainer, consultant, marketing guru, former professional actor, the one and only Michael Port. You know, as I said in the intro, I could not wait to have the Michael Port on the show so we can dig into this latest book and also his overall philosophy in business and life. And there it is. I am such a huge fan and admirer of his work, and I'm absolutely loving this latest book, Steal the Show. This is an awesome read. And if you're looking to become a better leader, a better speaker, motivator, influencer, you need to get this book. Great stuff. So I really want to thank Michael Port for being on the show, and I hope that you enjoyed our conversation and insights, and you can get more insights and links from the episode at genxamplified.com/018. And also don't forget to show some love and share this episode along with any of our other episodes with your friends, with your family, even your enemies. Hey, kill them with kindness and value. Speaking of other episodes, if you haven't already, definitely check out our previous episode, number 17, with another Michael, Mr. Michael O'Neill from the top-ranked podcast, The Solopreneur Hour. It was really a great chat as we discuss how to be a successful solopreneur. Really fun, really valuable. And you even get a chance to hear Mr. O'Neill sing a little Lionel Richie. That was pretty cool. But anyway, that will do it for this episode. And I truly, truly appreciate you listening in. And it's because of you I do what I do. So as always, my fellow exceptional Gen Xers, go and build your brand, amplify your story so you can maximize your impact in business and life. Thank you so much, and all the best to your success. Take care.